Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to be talking about some differences between my experience in studying in Cambridge and my friend Aryo's experience studying at MIT. So Aryo is going into his senior year, which is like the fourth year at MIT. He's currently on a gap year, and he did internships at Microsoft and also Jane Street, and is studying math and computer science. So I think that's like a double major. Is that correct?
In my case, it's actually like both majors combined under one. So it's like a math with computer science degree.
Oh, I see.
It's like one class away from becoming a double major.
So this video is not going to be one about admissions. It's more going to be comparing the university experience of Cambridge to MIT. And I wanted to make it myself because I don't think many UK students consider studying at US colleges, even though sometimes it might be cheaper for them to study in US colleges, because some good colleges have really good financial aid, even for international students. So yeah, I guess I'll say like the biggest difference that I noticed with having a lot of friends at US colleges is that they get a more varied experience when it comes to like being able to pick which major, minor, and like courses to do. So I guess I wanted to hear from Aryo, like what courses or like what things or classes have you taken that have really surprised you and you felt like really struck a chord with you? And do you enjoy the like variance versus like just only the classes to your major?
Yeah, I have to say I've taken a lot of advantage about the variance that I'm able to choose in my college schedule. Specifically for choosing a major, I came in thinking I would do like computer science as my major, pivoted over to like finance and management in one summer, pivoted over to biology, and then pivoted over to math. And there was no difficulty in like going through all those courses. In my junior year of college, so my third year of college, I tried to take as many varied courses as I could. So I took a lot in music production and like sound engineering, took courses in like political science as well as just random math and computer science classes that seemed interesting. But I think the flexibility is really nice because I don't really have a strong understanding of what I necessarily want to do in the future. But being able to explore whatever field seems the most interesting to me at the given moments, like I think really allows me to like expand my horizons.
Yeah, I think that's something I personally found like a lot of restricting about Cambridge is that if you apply for a specific subject like computer science, you can only do computer science classes, and you can't do classes in basically any other major that you might find interesting. And I hear that MIT also has like a like collaboration with Harvard, so you're able to like cross-register for some classes over there.
Yeah, it's really convenient. The political science class I took was at Harvard with their Kennedy School, so that was also a nice experience to get to have a class with like mid-seasoned professionals. So average age in the class was like 35 or 40 years old.
What is the Kennedy School, or like why is it mid-seasoned professionals?
I think that class was specifically underneath the mid-career master's program or something. So the targeted audience for that class was people who had gone through a career and were looking to switch into a more like political role. The Kennedy School is their like government school. I somehow managed to get into that class. I think they were under the impression that I was a mid-season professional from MIT or something. But either way, it's the flexibility to see other colleges was like pretty sweet. Also, sorry if there's background noise on my end.
Yeah, I can hear people screaming in the background. So you mentioned when starting at MIT, you thought you only wanted to study like computer science, and you sort of like changed a couple of times since then. Do you think like dabbling a bit in like each subject has given you like clearer understanding of like what you want to work on for the future, and also just like meeting people in those subjects as well?
Yeah, I absolutely think that having this broader perspective helped me understand what I want to do in the future, or at least like help understand what I don't want to do in the future.
I see. What do you mean by don't?
I guess it's hard to come in as like an 18-year-old and then say, I like completely understand these like deep fields and enough certainty to like want to dedicate the rest of my life to something. So I think what ended up happening with me is that for his freshman year, I got through a decent chunk of the CS curriculum. And then I realized it's like, wait, I can't really see myself doing this the rest of my life. So I realized I don't want to do just like pure software engineering in the traditional sense. As then like a follow-up that had happened is like, oh, I think biology is like really interesting, synthetic biology. Explore that a little bit, realize, okay, I think this is like a cool research topic. I don't think this is something I want to dedicate like any actual effort to in the long run for the rest of my life. Have I found something that I want to like spend the rest of my life doing? Like, no, but I think I'm getting closer to that due to the fact that I can talk to a lot of people across different majors, realize what they like and dislike about their job, and like kind of like combine what they say with what I think my own interests are, and hopefully find a career path that I would enjoy in the future.
I guess one part about going down this career path is you decide to take a gap year or like a gap semester out. What was some of your reasoning for wanting to take a gap semester?
Yeah, actually, a slight correction on that is like I decided halfway through my Jane Street internship that I was going to take a gap year this upcoming year.
Oh, okay.
I guess the whole progression from this is that I was always involved in startups, at least tangentially. So a nice thing about having a flexible class load is I can choose to take less classes some semesters, and one semester I chose to take less classes and work part-time at a VC firm in the Boston area. I've also worked on startups in the past, and I love working on projects with friends. And I realized my junior year fall, so this is last year, I tried to do a startup while in school. So I was working on a sports betting startup at that time. And I realized I was not able to dedicate enough time to that to actually make something successful. So I thought if I really wanted to explore startups for real, I should probably take time off school and just dedicate my whole time to it. And I also thought there's no downside, right? It's what happens? I take a gap year and then I just come back next year to finish my degree. That's completely fine. I don't think there's any issues with that.
Yeah, I think that's one difference compared to Cambridge is that in the experiences of my friends who tried to take a gap year, they usually make it quite difficult for you. And there's no way that you can take more than 2 years off unless you have serious medical conditions. It's somewhat easier to take 1 year off, but usually they don't like the attitude of, oh, I want to go and explore and develop my interests or something. It's more oh, I have mental health problems and I want to recover when they decide to let you take a year off. So it is certainly quite different. I think at least my experience is at Cambridge, it felt like there wasn't once so many opportunities to explore what you wanted to do in the future, where most people would only do things related to their major, where it was I'm studying computer science, I'm studying physics, I'm going to do a physics research internship, and then decide, one summer I might do a computer science or software engineering internship. And if you're there for 3 years, which is required for the bachelor's, then you basically only have 2 summers to experiment with things until you get a job. And then you don't have much time during the actual term times to experiment with things. So it sounds like one difference is that you can just take more time off at MIT if you want to, and you can take more classes one semester, take less classes another semester, and then take a wide range of classes to have the variance in what you want to do.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. I am surprised that you only have 2 internships to find out what you want to do in the future, because with 3 internships and potentially time in the winter to explore other career paths, I still find it's not enough to properly vet a lot of different fields. But I definitely appreciate that the architecture is set up in such a way that it makes it more possible to explore as many things as I want to.
And one difference that I also notice is there's a great emphasis on group projects in many classes, and basically each class is structured in a way however the professor wanted it to be structured. There are many situations or cases that allow for group projects, at least in physics at Cambridge. So yeah, I'm curious how you found group projects in general. Has that improved your capacity to work with other people, giving you clearer indication of how you want to be working with others?
I think even in high school, I think I liked group projects because I think it's just always fun to meet new people and talk to new people. I think one of the biggest benefits of going to college was being able to meet a diverse group of people who shared common interests with me. So I was generally a fan of group projects. Usually ended up I think some of my closest friends at schools are friends that I did group projects with in the past. In terms of how it actually affects how I learn the material, I would certainly say individual projects give me a deeper understanding of the class concept. But in terms of actually developing as a person, I think group projects are much more helpful for that. You spend a lot of time talking and working with people who may have different perspectives on either what is the best type of work ethic, how should I divide my time, or you just get to know people really well. And I think that's the best benefit that I've found at school so far.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you find a lot of your friends or a lot of people at MIT seem to be solely focused on academics, so they have a clearer sense of what they want to be doing with their lives, or academic wise than you?
It's a mix. I think there are certainly a lot of people who have clearly understood what they want to do in the future, or have a really good guess as to what they want to do in the future and are exploring that full force. But I think there's also a sizable chunk of people who are still trying to figure it out as well. I don't really know if that's like a college specific thing, but I think it's just like had I like I don't know, had I like being able to talk to a lot of people makes you realize that there's like people on both sides of the spectrum. People who like know what they're doing and people who are still figuring things out.
And when it comes to other people figuring things out, how do they go about figuring things out? Is it the same as you? Like you just take a bunch of classes, you like do a couple internships, like do some work during the term time for like a consulting group or startup or something?
I'm not too sure exactly what other people do. And like some of like the people that I really respect in terms of figuring things out have like different setups. Like either they'll spend 100 days working on something in particular, and then like write up like an analysis of like what I liked and what I didn't like about doing it, and use that to influence their next like 100 days that they choose to explore something else in. Other people, like I try to like just talk to as many people as I can who are doing things that I think I might be interested in to see like how fast can I get over this learning curve of this getting into this new field that I may be interested in. Other than that, I don't really think there's too many novel techniques, I guess, for figuring out what they want to do.
I think something that my audience ends up like commenting a bunch on is that I like end up doing unusual things, or I take like unusual path. It's like interning for like a YouTuber or like randomly making videos during college. Do you find many people like doing like pretty unusual things or like considering like unusual paths in MIT, either through their side projects or their internships, or just anything else? Or are there a lot of people who are just like, yeah, you know, I'm just going to like work at a big like tech company and like do that every summer, then like graduate and do that?
I would certainly say what you just like the last thing you described was like I guess like the normal path I'd say at MIT, which is either going to do like trading, I'm going to do like SWE, or I'm going to do something else, and just do 3 years of that, graduate, and then like do that full time. I will say there's like a large chunk of other people who do have like more esoteric hobbies or are choosing more interesting career paths, but I wouldn't say that's a function of the school itself. I think there'll probably be these groups of people that are doing that at whatever school someone goes to.
What have you found to be like the most esoteric things that people have been doing?
I guess esoteric is like a pretty strong word to use. I honestly, for me, like considering like the type of people that I typically meet at MIT, anything that's like esoteric is like not going into like SWE, quant, or startup. It's maybe someone is like trying to make like their own like grants foundation. Maybe they're starting a nonprofit. Both of these are like things I've seen people do. One of my other friends is like spending a lot of time like working in cryptography for like crypto, and I think these are paths that are available to people and like certainly pique their interests, but it's not paths that a lot of other people walk. So it's like hard to realize that you can even take those paths in the first place.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the same applies to probably Cambridge as well, where like maybe at most schools you don't have a lot of people doing something very unusual and very interesting, and they don't even realize that's possible. Why when I mention to someone like, oh, like I intend for like a YouTuber or something, like they just also suddenly think, oh, maybe I can also intend for a YouTuber. Like one of my friends who intended for Elton John, people were just like, wow, like that's crazy. I just didn't even realize you could do that. I think talking a little bit about the course structure or like the courses, how have you usually found them structured, and like what have you considered to be like some of the best classes at MIT?
Okay, I think I will give my best answer to this, but like as a caveat, every single semester I was kind of like, what are some like cool, interesting classes I can take? And I don't really care if they fulfill my major or not. I'll make it work out in the end. Generally, the way I see it work is like you have like this like, it's kind of like a stem or like a trunk with like a few required classes for every single major and like a bunch of different branches that you can like go down any single path that you want. So for, I guess like in the computer science trajectory, you'll have like introduction to programming, maybe like a follow-up course to that, like a data structures and algorithms class, and like a general like software construction class. But then aside from that, you kind of get a lot of flexibility within that major to choose what you want to focus in. For instance, MIT has like course 6, which is its computer science division. And inside that you have like the focus on electrical engineering, which is 6.1, to like strict computer science, like software engineering, which is 6.3. You have AI you can focus in, like computational biology, computational neuroscience. So these are all like specializations that like anyone can go down. And I think it's very easy to switch between those and like mix classes from like different specialties. So I think like the course structure itself is like very fluid. This is more MIT specific than other colleges in the US, but I've also found it to be very lax in terms of requirements being enforced. For instance, there was like classes I wanted to take freshman year that had like a few different prereqs to them. But if you just like show up to the class, the professors are usually fine with you just taking them. So course structure is like, yeah, very fluid. Kind of can just take whatever you want. And usually professors and academic advisors are like very chill. If you're like, oh, I've taken like X amount of math classes, I should probably have a math degree at this point. They tend to be on board with that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think it's quite different from Cambridge in the sense, like, in my third year when I was doing physics, there were 8 lecture courses that you could pick for physics.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to pick 7. You could pick all 8 if you wanted to. So, like, it literally just ends up being a choice between, like, do you pick, like, one class or this other class? And some people would just, like, well, I'll just, like, pick whichever one that's easiest. And this is your third year as well, where I think in many other colleges you have more choice in your third year.
Yeah. No, some of my friends, like, now entering their last year of college are, like, working on very, very niche, very, very specific classes with maybe, like, 5 to 6 people, like, super, super specific, like, hardware-based classes or super, super specific, like, AI-based classes. And
so do you find people, like, take the broad set of classes in their first year and then, like, slowly specialize? Or they're, like, people who just, like, take broad classes every year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, like, yeah, more of a mixed bag depending on how confident someone is in their trajectory that they want. I think, let's just take, like, the stereotypical example of someone enters being a computer science major, knows they want to be a computer science major. They take their broad classes freshman year with maybe a little bit of specialization. Sophomore year, they can like start to specialize like really concretely into something. And that specialization just gets deeper and deeper and deeper by the time they reach senior year.
I see.
But that's like, I guess like the ideal case for someone that wants to do computer science. What usually ends up happening is someone will like start somewhere. Maybe they start going down like electrical engineering, then realize, wait, I actually want to do like AI instead. And like that like minor pivot doesn't like derail their graduation requirements by too much.
Have you found that being able to take classes which are not to do with your major has given you like a general like great appreciation for like learning and like knowledge and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I ask this from the perspective of like, some people do say that whilst at Cambridge are like, oh, you can like go sit in a humanities lecture anyway or whatever, or you can like go like sit in on this class. Like the thing is you can't actually take part in the class, and anytime that you aren't devoting to your like the classes that you actually have to do, which are often all to do with the degree that you're studying, it feels like time wasted, whereas like at least in US colleges you get credits for like some of these other classes you're taking. But yeah, I guess back to the question, have you like found that's giving you a great appreciation for learning as a whole?
I've been like interested in learning, so I don't think like taking classes in specific minors have like given me a better appreciation for learning. I think it's certainly like satiated my curiosity though. Like I'm like interested in music. I like to play songs. I like to like make my own songs. So I'm like pretty curious about how the tech behind this works. So even though it's like not directly applicable to my like major, which ended up being a math major, I can take like courses in like sound engineering. Likewise, I think like negotiating with other people is like pretty interesting. The startup that I'm working on right now is like tangentially related to negotiations. But I strictly like due to the freedom of whatever classes I could take, I was able to take a negotiation class in the first place to even realize this was something that I really liked.
I see. So I guess like taking on these classes has given you like a great appreciation for like, all the things that are possible, in the sense that taking a sound engineering class, you can just decide, oh, hey, maybe I should like go be a sound engineer or like work in like the movie industry or something in the future.
No, yeah, exactly. I think that sums it up pretty well.
Do you find there are many opportunities where like people come in when they're teaching these classes, the professor talks about their like own personal experience, and you're like, oh wow, like I say this because I heard from a friend that like one of the negotiating classes is taught by like someone who's done like crazy things, like being like an editor for like the New York, like senior editor for the New York Times or something.
That is indeed quite true. Yes, some classes do bring in like guest speakers. I found that to be less informative than the actual just like class content itself, because I'm sure anyone, if they're passionate about the topic, can like pitch this concept as like a really cool thing. But I need to understand if I'm actually passionate about this topic or not. And the only way I can do that is like by getting my hands dirty and like doing the work itself. So I haven't really found that like guest speakers have like altered my decisions about career paths, less so than like the actual work of doing the course itself.
Oh, I see. So the actual work of doing the course is like the close representation to what it's like to do in the future.
Yeah, with the big caveat being that like classes are like kind of disjointed from like what actually happens in the workforce. But I think it's an okay approximation.
You did internships at Microsoft and also Jane Street, and now you're like taking a gap semester to like work on a startup. Um, I guess like what has doing these internships like taught you in terms of how you want to work and like potentially what kind of jobs you want to do in the future?
Yeah, sure. So actually, like freshman summer, I was interning at a cryptocurrency startup. During that time there, I realized that like startups were like pretty interesting. I think something I want to get involved with in the future. However, I think due to the fact that I could like take a large variety of courses, I kind of knew that I wanted to see like what the other side of like the world looks like. So went to internet in Microsoft, which is I guess like the polar opposite of a startup. It's like the largest company you can like think of. Um, I guess my journey was kind of always been like, what do I think is like the thing that'll interest me the most? What is the easiest way to test it over the span of 3 months? And then like, what is my new belief of what the most interesting thing is? So after Microsoft, my new belief was that I think working in a fast-paced environment is the most interesting thing. So let me try quant. That's like as fast-paced as you can get. And then after that, I think I realized I need like some combination of like fast-paced plus like impact plus like having autonomy over the project. And that like led me to startups now. But I think internships are incredibly valuable for like ironing out what you like actually want out of a job in the future.
Yeah, I found that to be the case for myself when one thing I was considering was, hey, whether I should take my YouTube channel more seriously. And hey, maybe I should like intend for a YouTuber and see what like actually having a full-time YouTube channel is like. So I just like decided to do that. So it sounds like you kind of like went on a whole like 180 where you like started off in startups and then like you went to polar opposites and now you're like back to startups. It sounds like working in different environments has given you like some kind of taste or appreciation for like what you liked about your first environment.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, what have I liked about this environment is like the control that I have over the end product is really nice. The element of risk is also like pretty enjoyable. It's like I'm exposed to all the upside and exposed to all the downside. So if there's anyone to blame for things going wrong, it's just myself. There's like no back office to talk to. It's like just me and my co-founder, and we'll have to figure it out. I think there's a large element of this that it's more unique. I feel like I'm learning a lot of different skills that I wouldn't have learned if I were to work at a company, such as like how to best manage my time, how to make stuff that consumers actually enjoy, how to like sell a product. I think these are all skills that I would have never learned had I like worked at another company.
Yeah, so it sounds like during your time in college or your 3 4 years in college, like basically following whichever direction interests you the most, like testing that out, finding like a cheap way to test out by like working on it for a couple of months, has given you some kind of like taste or flavor for what you want to be doing in the future.
It's certainly given me a best guess for what I want to do in the future. I guess I started this approach back in high school. Obviously, the iteration cycles were slower, but in high school was like the first time I was like, oh, I think computer science would be like really cool, or like just full stack development would be interesting. I'm like very appreciative of the environment that I've been in that allows me to like pivot around to whatever I want while I'm still trying to figure out things. I think otherwise I'd be like stuck doing something that I knew I did not like in the future.
Have you done any research internships whilst you were at MIT, and like how have you found them to be? Or
I
like
did research.
projects?
I did research during my freshman year. So I was interested in financial data, which is kind of why I got into quant my junior year. But during that year, I was like doing stock market research with ML, and I thought it was interesting. I don't really regret not doing more research after that. I just don't think it was quite for me. But it was a good opportunity to explore it.
I guess what made you realize that it was not quite for you?
Doing the work and realizing that it wasn't too fun.
That makes sense.
That was a pretty clear indicator.
Yeah. Oh no. So I mean, like, do you have a framework in mind where I guess like as a framework for me is one reason I like software engineering more than I like physics is because the iteration cycles are much faster where like when I'm doing software engineering, I can like run the code, know whether I'm right basically immediately, run the code again, like add a few more lines. I like can do a couple hundred times every day.
Yeah.
Whereas at least with research is like the iteration cycles, rather than being like a couple of minutes, are like hours, days, sometimes even weeks. And it just feels like you're not making a lot of progress. And I realize that for me personally, I always like the feeling that I'm making progress. So I guess my question is like, do you have like a framework in mind that like doing all these internships or like research projects helped you
Sure, sure,
realize?
sure. Yeah, I will say like freshman year, I definitely did not like the reason why I gave like that joke answer was that freshman year I certainly did not have this like any framework in mind. I was, I guess, implicitly trying out things that I liked, but I wasn't really being like deliberate about what I was trying out. And I think I started to develop a framework around like the spring of my sophomore year.
Hmm.
I guess like if I had to look back and like analyze like what I liked and disliked about research, um, the ingenuity for the direction of the project wasn't give it like I wasn't the one like actually providing the ingenious like figuring out like what to do next on the project. That was like my PI and like my mentor saying, "Oh, you should try X, you should try Y." So it ended up like feeling like I was kind of just like executing like commands that someone else like thought about. And
Hmm.
I guess if I like spent a lot of time in research, eventually I could rise to the ranks where I would be the one having these like super cool thoughts to figure out what to do next. But I didn't really vibe with spending that long to get to that time. To get to that position.
I guess when it came to interning in a startup, like not many people have interned at startups before. So is there anything in particular that you liked about that environment that made you want to like go back and now work on your own startup?
Yeah, I guess like the important distinction is I'm now like working on my own startup rather than working for a startup. And I think that
Hmm.
distinction comes from I found that working at a startup has like some similarities to like big tech that I'm not necessarily like, the biggest fan of. Such
Hmm.
as like what's it like working at a startup? Well, working at a startup is very, very hectic. Um, you're like I guess you're under this impression that like everyone you're working with is like every single second counts. Like you need to be like on the ball at all times and there's a lot of responsibility imparted on you.
Hmm.
Like they're like counting on you to like get product shipped. They're counting on you to build stuff that are critical for whatever they're building next. And I really like that feeling of responsibility. I
Hmm.
think it's also the way to grow the fastest. I think I learned way more during my first summer internship than I did at Microsoft, just because you're forced to get exposed to so many more things.
Hmm.
And yeah, not sure if I really
Is it
answered your
because
question.
is it because at Microsoft there are like so many layers between you and like the end like customer that things just get lost along the way? Or like I had for some big tech internships, you can like disappear for a week and no one really notices or cares.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I did disappear for a week to London during my big tech internship. but
I see.
uh, I think like the biggest difference I see it is like big tech treats interviews as treats internships as a hiring pipeline,
Hmm.
so you can get hired immediately out of that. Where startups treat interns as people that are doing necessary work for the company's success. Like
Hmm.
the company has like made a conscious choice to open up an intern position because they have work that they need to get filled. And obviously the goal is like to convert you into a full-time employee at some point.
Yeah,
But like more important than that is like there's immediate deliverables that are needed. You need to get those done now.
that makes sense. And what has like the added responsibility like helped you with, or like what things have you learned from that startup internship that you're like now like using in your day-to-day life now with your own startup?
Yeah. I guess like the biggest thing that carries over is dependability is like super, super huge. Like in my case, when I was working at the internship freshman summer, I'm not interfacing directly with customers, but I'm interfacing directly with my mentor, who like needs my stuff done in time to show the customers. And
Hmm.
he like needs me to be dependable. He needs me to be like, oh, if this is going to take like an extra week, I need you to let me know so that I can like tell the customers accordingly. It's definitely
Hmm.
like not shrinking away from, like, I guess admitting your own failures was I think a big like life lesson that I learned during that internship. And like now it's like
Hmm.
very important when I'm interfacing directly with customers. It's like
I see. What do you
I
mean by
startups need like
shrinking away from your own failures?
I guess like the goal at a startup is like to push the pace as fast as possible. So we want to tell consumers that we can get this product shipped by X, we can get this product shipped by Y. And usually that timeline that we set is like either a day or like a few hours quicker than we think we can actually get it done.
Hmm.
And most of the time that like allows us to magically get it done in this shorter amount of time. But sometimes there's unforeseen difficulties, and we might tell a client like, "Oh, we can get like all these features built for you over the weekend," and then we realize like Sunday night, it's like, man, this is like not actually going to work. Even if we pulled an all nighter, we can't get this done in time.
I see.
I think it's like hard to like tell someone that like put their trust in you to build these things out. It's like, hey, we actually have to let you down. We can't actually get these things done for you now. But
I see.
doing that rather than just like going in ghost mode or just avoiding the problem entirely,
Hmm.
and the tact that you need to be able to tell clients with is I think things I learned from that first internship.
So I guess one question for you is: it sounds like the life lessons are like the generic lessons about working have been much more valuable for you than like any amount that you would have been paid for the internship, or like are the lessons so valuable that you would have done the internship for free?
No, definitely not. I think everyone should be compensated for the work that they do. And I think when someone attaches a price tag to things,
Yeah.
and like implicitly adds a sense of responsibility for you. It's like, especially at a startup, it's like, wow, they don't have all that much capital, and they're entrusting me with some of that, so they clearly want some deliverables. I think that was like some added pressure to like perform well. Had they made me do it for free, even if I had no choice but to like work there for the summer, I would have found that my quality of work would have been much, much less. I think I would not have been motivated to like perform nearly as well.
Yeah. I do think being paid for like internships does give you like a better sense of like, hey, my work here is actually being valued, and like it pushes you to work harder as well. Maybe it's like less of a case of how much you're being paid, just the fact that you're like being paid a reasonable amount. Makes sense?
I don't know. I feel like I think the compensation amount I feel is like should be proportional to the amount of work that you're putting in for the company.
I see.
Obviously, there's like barriers across industries. Like I think government jobs as a whole tend to pay less than like financial jobs. So it's like unreasonable to expect a government job to pay as much as a financial job. But like things like groups have industry standards. Like if you're paying like half of the industry standard rates, then I would expect that my learning experience or the skills that I would grow from this place should be like proportionally less than like the average company in such industry.
That makes sense. Yeah, I pushed over call. It's 10:15, so I'm gonna have to like hop off and like go there.
Gotcha.